my name is going on these things and I want to do the best I can. I want to make sure everyone else looks the best they can. And that just pushes you to try even harder.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cut to Reveal podcast, where we talk about the editing art form. Today, Peter and I got to talk to Mike Hugo.
Yeah, Mike is someone who was an assistant editor for Sean Baker on the Florida Project, which is one of my favorite feature films. And Mike has been working in post-production for over a decade, so he has a lot of experience. And he's clearly someone that is very passionate about editing art form, what we can do as editors to influence how stories are being told about filmmaking. He's truly passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, it was great talking to him. And he basically let us in on his newest project, or at least the project that he just finished up, which is a horror thriller called Hypochondriac, which seems to be shrouded in mystery because if you go online, there's not even a trailer. There's only a poster. It definitely premiered at South by Southwest, but he gives us some insight on the making of the film, working with the director, and about the film in general. So it's all really exciting. It was great. It was a great time talking with Mike. So, yeah. And with that, let's listen to Mike Hugo. Roll the tape.
Sort of my same thing is, I lived in LA for 18 years, right out of college, basically learned all the tech stuff. And I've cut, skate videos, some commercials, a lot of corporate, shorts, features, documentaries. And to this day, I'm juggling between a documentary and a corporate thing right now. And it's, make ends meet. It's feature films can go for 4 to 6 months. And it's like, what are you going to do in between? They don't line up exactly back to back. And as being a freelancer, you're unemployed for a month and you're like, man, I should have gone on a trip or something. And then of course you find a job. And it's just one of those things where you're never, it's difficult and you just got to kind of roll with it. And so it's a trip for sure.
Yeah. I feel like it's always like when it rains, it pours, I like to say, in like a positive way, maybe negative, where it's like just this week I was doing some editing, just like personal stuff. And then I got this job yesterday, which is a deadline tomorrow, and then somebody else hit me up and they're like, hey, do you want some work? And I'm like, yes. So it's just things keep hitting. And because
totally.
I'm a freelancer, I'm like, I can't not turn this down because I don't know when I'll work again. So
it's so true. I think it was like 2-3 films ago, I signed on to it. And then of course, like 3 other things popped up like right when I did it. And I was like, and I really don't bail on my gigs because I like to see it through, and so it's difficult for me to really part ways because you have such a connection with your clients or your director or producers or whoever. And it's difficult. It is. When it rains, it pours and you put out as many buckets as you can. Yeah. And from there, it's sort of just like, it does dry up for everybody. And that's something, especially with pandemic that happened, like production shut down in LA. We were in the middle of a film and we're waiting to do pickups and they wouldn't let anyone shoot. And so we were on hold for like a month or two. And then finally production opened up, but it was skeleton crew only. I wasn't allowed to go on set. So they actually zoomed me into the camera so I could actually see what they were shooting. I was screen capturing it and dropping it into my project and going, okay, guys, that's a little short, that's a little long, and basically directing through the camera, which was awesome. Yeah. And it was one of those where I'm like, wow, is this the future of editing? But at the same time, I think I was sitting for like 6 hours. Like, hey guys, I got to go to the bathroom. Like, I got to back off here because you're just stuck in your chair all day because you're on set basically. Right. But yeah, that was really cool and very different for sure.
We had talked to somebody in a previous episode who kind of did the same thing. Yeah. Was it? I don't know. What was it? Did they use a Teradek or something to use that?
Yeah, but
it was something like that.
The point was that we've mentioned that Frame.io has this feature camera to cloud workflow.
Yep.
Right. Yep. Which allows you to sends you proxy versions of what has been shot on set right away, which is perfect.
Totally, which is awesome as long as you're in a internet friendly area. Yeah, that's the one thing. A lot of these features are bad cell reception. Even a lot of the someone was doing an interview for a doc somewhere, and they were like it was like a metal cage almost, and even the lavs and stuff were having issues, and I'm like, you're never getting anything out of there. So it's one of those. I think it's a great idea because it takes a lot of work off of the DIT's hands, because a lot of time they're freaking out trying to push things through as fast as possible, and I'd rather have it be correct than expedited. You know, and that's the big thing, because as you guys know, it's once it comes to us, it's kind of like, okay, I hope it was done correctly, or else everything's going to unravel and you got to fix it. And it stops you down for being creative, which again is my biggest point is I don't want technology interfering with the creative side. You know, as soon as you hitch on that, and especially your clients do, it's throw everything against the wall, guys. I'll tell you if I can't do it, you know, and we'll find someone that can, or is it possible whatsoever. And so that's kind of where I think that, you know, Frame.io is pushing the bounds here. And, you know, I'm really happy that Adobe acquired them, because it's just creating this sort of atmosphere where it's kind of turnkey, where you really don't have to go far and you can do so much with what's at your fingertips. And the other thing I always say too is, like, you can have a laptop, you can have a really not the greatest computer, and you can still do everything and anything anybody wants, which is awesome. Yeah. So, you know, it's up to everybody to do what they want to do.
Especially now that you can actually have like a cloud computer, which, you know, you can run like on very old laptop, and you can have like a powerful machine. I was talking with one of my tech friends, and we were doing trials for trying to figure out how to get dual screen out of Adobe Cloud Service. And because the proxy, basically that stuff can transcode so fast, and you know, it's really, you're paying by the minute, so you're not using it all the time. You can turn it off, turn it on. And Adobe also does their file storage. So they'll actually you can ship a drive to them. They'll upload all your data, and you only pay for bringing down certain things. And so it was really cool trying to think of, okay, well, how could this be helpful to us, where I don't have to have all these hard drives here, and people can basically just upload things, and I can pull down if I need to, but it can all live there. And, you know, creating that kind of shared server, instead of it being an edit bay with, you know, multiple editors and assistants, it could actually be, that could be across the US, it could be across the world, and there's no latency. You know, so it's exciting to see where this is going to be going. You know, just the steps it's taken in the last 5 years is like huge.
Oh, for sure.
It's a cliche, but we live in the future,
Exactly. So true. I think I pulled out, the wife was like, oh, can you edit this real quick? And I'm like, what am I going to edit this on? I pull out my phone. I was like, oh yeah, I got Adobe Rush on my phone. I'm like, I'm literally sitting here editing on my phone going, this is so weird. But it's impossible.
It's funny because I've had that experience too, when I was like, Future is now like 3 or 4 years ago on my phone editing like a corporate spot while I was shooting it on the same scene, like in the mountains at like a ski resort. And it's like I'm sitting in a hall.
And like what you said too, it's like I remember 3/4 too. Like that's where you're going from that to your phone. Like it's like that's mind blowing. Like you know, even just the tapes and XD cam, basically DVDs, you know, all going away. Like that's just so insane. And, you know, my concern is always the longevity of the hard drives. You know, all things die. And codecs, you know, I always have these debates with people of what codec are you going to store it in, you know? And it's like, okay, you're not going to go to a data magnetic track.
LTO
basically.
tape? That's what you mean?
LTO, there we go. Yes, LTO. Thank you.
We got there. We can do stuff.
We have the internet. But there was, you know, a lot of insurance companies want major films to back up on that as a safety. And, you know, because it's not a spinning disc, and, you know, those kind of things, it's ones and zeros. And so it's definitely interesting where this whole industry is going and how accessible it is the number one. So
LTO tapes are like, you know, old technology, but the entry point though is a little bit high, not for a freelancer like me. Like
no. I remember trying to pull stuff off of there a long time ago. Someone shot something on a Viper, and we were onlining in a Quantel Pablo, which is like an amazing online system. But I was like, oh man, I got to learn terminal code. Like, I'm sitting there going like, oh, please don't type the wrong thing. Like, it's definitely difficult.
If if Mike, if you could give us like more context about like what your most recent project is. We haven't been able to watch it. It's not accessible yet, right? So if you can, like,
correct. My last film that came out is called Hypochondriac. It premiered world premiere at South by Southwest, and it was a labor of love, which was awesome. And it came from me from a producer from a previous film. He said, "I think you'd be perfect for this." First time feature director, and he also co-wrote it, Addison Heyman, who is super talented, and we hit it off immediately when we first met. And I loved the script because you could tell it's mostly it's based off of his personal life. And so there's a weird connection there. And what it is, it's basically a horror thriller, basically about a mental breakdown of the main character, Will. And his mom is a diagnosed schizophrenic, and basically he's going into this breakdown thinking that he might be schizophrenic also. And so you're seeing this deterioration, this questioning, this sort of chaos go on through the film, and it kind of gets worse and worse and worse. To me, it was so important because it has such big tones about mental health and how telling people to ask for help. You know, everyone goes through times in their life where they need help. You know, you could be the strongest person in the world, they're still going to need help with something. And this conjures that up. And it struck a chord with a lot of people in South by Southwest that have had similar situations or have never seen anything like this. You know, it was such an interesting project to go through because, you know, we're telling his story, but we're also making it, you know, bumping up the insanity meter is what we kept saying, is how far can we push it? And so, you know, having these moments of, oh my God, this happened to you. And, you know, he hurt his arms and he didn't know what was going on. And so the title comes Hypochondriac because he's like, there's something wrong with me and I don't know what it is. And so it kind of goes down this rabbit hole. And, you know, it was so much fun working with him because it was like, are you okay? Are we doing this right? You know, kind of thing. We had this one scene where basically the producer and I were cutting it with Addison, and he got all quiet and we both looked at him and he just was like, I gotta go. And he had to go for a walk, and he came back and I was like, oh shit, did we do something wrong? And he's like, no, that was perfect. Like, you brought up the emotion I had, and that's what I want to convey to the audience. Oh, and wow. So we were like, oh my God, that's so awesome. And it was so nice for him to be able to share that, because sometimes you're tippy-toeing. And as you guys know, when you're editing, you spend a lot of time with people, and a lot of it you can take as personal, but it's not. And it's just, you know, there's different ways, different experiences. I have a different tool set. He has a different tool set. And so it was a fun project to sort of go through, because it was different, and we did kind of try some different things. And, you know, it's probably the fastest feature I've locked the story itself within probably 5-6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, which is insane. Because usually you're like, oh, this isn't working. And we were like, the story's killing it right now. Now we get to have fun. Now we get to see, like, okay, what do we want to pull out? What do we want to do? What do we want to add? You know, let's start working on some sound design. Let's start thinking about music and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it was fun. It was a great project, and definitely proud of it. And, you know, hopefully more eyeballs be on it soon. I think it was acquired by XYZ Films and will be released in theaters and streaming, I think, later this year, I think. And I'm ready to show people. That's probably the hardest part after some of these projects, is like, I can't show anything. Yeah. So that's, you know, and currently I'm cutting a documentary, and, you know, it's a total sort of brain twist where, you know, I love features because you're locked into kind of a playground, where with documentaries, you're kind of, it could be a city, it could be a state, you know, you can go any which way. Yeah. But with, you know, features, you're a little more contained. You can still be super creative, but documentaries can go any which way, and you don't know it until you start getting into it. And especially as an editor, going through hours and hours and hours and hours of interviews, it's just like, oh my God.
It's a writing process, yeah.
It's the last, that's the third writing of the film, you know, and that's what I say that to every single director, especially if they're the director and the writer. Like, do you know the 3 phases of film? The script, production, and post. And it's going to change. No matter how much money or how little money you have, it always changes. And so as long as they're flexible with that, I know they're creative. And I know, the biggest thing is this is a collaborative process. And you can't just do it yourself. And if you think you can, it may not be the right profession for you, because you are going to have to make changes. You are going to have to do things you may not like. But at the same time, you're going to do things, you're going to push things that you do like, and they're going to love it. And so it's really sort of this delicate balance of trying and experimenting, and it's fun, I'm sure you guys have fun with it too, where it's like when you come up with something, you're like, whoa, how did I think about that,
Yeah, actually, it's a film about a state of mind to some extent. So I'm wondering, is there some kind of visual grammar you had to come up with to progress the story and show the progression of characters' emotion?
You totally nailed it. We had sort of our rule book in our head, and the biggest thing that helped us develop the story was, it's kind of a recounting from Will, the main character's point of view. And as humans, our memories fade, they break apart, you lose details. And having that and knowing that, we were using really long cross dissolves, which is very classic cinema, and I haven't seen that in a while. And they're beautiful, because you're seeing these sort of memories sort of collide with each other. There's details there, but there's a weird overlap. And so we were doing a lot of that, and it sort of slows things down where it's kind of bleeding memory to memory. So that, keeping that in mind, that was the biggest thing, is memory. What's happening? Things start getting, the insanity meter, we kept saying, is starting to crank up. The second act, the third act, it's basically pinned to 100. And what we were using too was a lot of visual cues, a lot of mirroring, where basically the memory's splitting, it's reacting, and it's character shifting, because there is an homage to Donnie Darko in here. There is a character that's like Donnie Darko, and we did a lot of research. We had a bunch of films like Donnie Darko, Daniel Isn't Real, Possessor. Those films were really inspiring to us, and we were kind of our go-to of okay, how's the pacing there? How does this feel? Because it is an identity problem. And so using mirroring, using overlays, using part of the film they actually filmed on high 8. And so it's digital, it's an old security camera. And that was what we did towards the end, is these memory flashbacks I cut, and then I actually reshot it on my iPhone. And so you get the pixels from the screen, and it becomes almost this, it becomes analog, because things are happening. It becomes, wait, there's a little bit of moire. And it's, again, that's how Addison was that's how I remember things. He was a 90s kid. He didn't watch as many films. It was more digital. And so it's that nostalgia was for these pixels, and how they start pulling apart, and how things start, disintegrating, because it's just blocky. And so sort of playing with that, where again, it's memory. It's things are, where's the focus? Is it on a mouth? Is it on a hand? When you recount something, you specifically remember something you see and something you smell is usually what it is. Those kind of things where it's we were blowing into a mouth when his dad said something, because those are the things that come into your head. So it was very sort of memory based. And it was a lot of fun to cut, because it was, we tried so many different things. We were doing smash cuts. Scene didn't end. Scene wasn't completely clean, and we just cut to the next one. And it was, okay, that's cool, but it doesn't work for this film. It was too abrupt. And so we pulled back on some of that stuff. So we had a lot of fun experimenting with techniques. How are we blurring these scenes together, or are we blurring them together, or do we leave them clean? Do we leave sort of a beat afterwards where it's when's it going to end, kind of thing. And so it was a film we had so much fun playing with, and that was just you get to be the artist. You get to really just sort of think about this, but really have to know, like you said, what are our set of rules? Does this make sense? And I think this was one of the first films we didn't have to really ADR anything, any added dialogue.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. Addison was very adamant about, if we don't have it, I don't want to add anything. Let's see what we can do. And that was a box I haven't had to play in a long time. And it was awesome, because it really made us create certain things that we never would have been able to do, because there's the easy out. We'll just add a line somewhere, And that was so much fun, Being an editor, you want to be free, but at this time it was hey, let's stay within these bounds, and we did it, and it was awesome.
I think that being an artist, being creative like that, like it's so much easier when you have those confines compared to like somebody being like, just do whatever. Because then you're like, okay, well, kind of like how you described like a documentary, you know, like because Peter and I, we were always doing like that type of like vignette type of documentary work where you get a client that's just like, well, here's the general idea and here's the footage. And it's just like, okay. And then you just have like this giant idea and like, okay, I got to kind of do it, which is very anxiety inducing when you're like, okay, this is the path you want to go and just stick to that path. You're like, all right, let's do it. And then you can laser point focus rather than like, okay, bring it in. Let's get all this stuff in and see what we have before we can even start playing with anything.
Totally agree. Agree. And that is difficult. That is, you know, with all projects, it can go any which way and you just don't know. And, you know, there are a million right ways to do it and a handful of wrong ways to do it, you know, and that's what's so crazy about this art, you know, it's, as I say to everybody is, you know, art, no one has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. The Mona Lisa, no one loves that, you know? Totally said that wrong. The Mona Lisa isn't liked by everybody, you know, and it's this piece. And at the same time, there are these films that are 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but there are people that don't like it, you know, and that's taste. And that's why it's art. And so you're trying to communicate feelings and emotions, and that's what we're trying to do.
Right. It's that fine line of like, subjectivity, like you said, like Mona Lisa is considered a classic, and then the people are like, it's a girl with no eyebrows and she's not even smiling. I don't understand. So yeah, you hit it on the head. It's that subjectiveness where you're like, things that you feel you're doing, you know, basically my point is like, you can't please everybody, and everybody has different tastes, and nobody is wrong either.
Yeah. And that was the thing too, is even working with Addison, I was, you know, certain things I'm like, stick to your guns, man. If you really feel adamant about something, go for it, you know, and I'll back you up. I will work this to make it work for more eyeballs, but a lot of time you're trying to please everybody and you're not going to. And so it's really, if you have an emotion, you want to convey that, stick to it and just work on it. There's one scene that was very, very difficult. We had about 10 different versions and we couldn't figure it out. It just wasn't communicating the way we wanted it to. And part of it was practicality. There was a kiln involved and we were going to have fire, but then it wasn't going to happen and we were going to CG some stuff and that just wasn't going to look right. So we're like, okay, we got to get creative here. And, you know, towards the end, we finally came up with something where we were trying to overstimulate and over detail the scene. And immediately we're like, well, what if we showed less? What if we did the Reservoir Dogs cutting off the ear, which you don't actually see, but you hear something going on. It's like Jaws. You don't see the shark, you hear it, and you know something's going to happen. So it's the human mind that's actually playing more. So we did a lot of dips to black with small little pieces of detailed information, visually and audible. And we were just like, holy crap, I can't believe that worked. And it comes out of nowhere, and at the same time it works. And it was so much fun to sort of get there, because I'm like, man, that was a hassle. But at the same time, you're like, we did it, you know? And so very proud of that. And, you know, it's one of those things, there's a fix for everything. It's just, you got to put time and effort, and you got to sometimes back away. You know, that was a big thing we did too, where I was cutting from Atlanta part of the time. Then I went out to LA for a week to work with Addison. Then I came back and sort of gave us this, okay, let's watch this again. Let's take a break. You know, what are we getting out of this? Because as editors too, you see and watch something so many times, you're connecting things that some people won't connect.
Yeah,
and,
it's a curse of knowledge.
Sometimes, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, especially with stuff that I'm sure you guys cut too, is after a while you start to hate certain music and certain dialogue because you've heard it 100 times or more. And so, you know, one thing I've always said too is I need a baseball clicker to count how many times I've watched a film when I'm cutting it, because it's like, I probably don't want to know because it's like too many times. But at the same time, when you're still enjoying it and loving it towards the end of the process, that tells you you're doing something right. You know, so yeah, sorry, I'm sort of dominating the conversation.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, in 2020, I released a feature documentary. That's on Amazon and Hulu and blah, blah, blah. Not Hulu, but Amazon and Vimeo. And it's a documentary about this hardcore band out of Massachusetts called Bane. So it was their final tour and whatever.
Very cool.
Yeah, I got the vein. What are you on?
I was going to say, that's awesome.
So,
I used to listen to them.
Oh, there you go. So they
Yeah.
basically, it was their final US tour, and just kind of like it's about their tour, and then kind of like the behind the scenes about the band and whatever. But it was definitely that thing where you're watching it so many times and you're like, I fucking hate this movie. Why am I watching this? And then, but I had that moment where like I stepped away long enough and then watched it again, and I was like, hey, this is actually pretty good. This is actually a good movie. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
A lot of the time, we're our worst critiques, you know, like our worst critics. Excuse me. God, my words are fumbling today. I need to cut something rather than talk. But yeah, it's tough because a lot of the time I'm the same way, where it's like, am I doing this right? Am I good enough to do this? It's that self-doubt, and you know, I think all artists have that, and it should help you to keep pushing and keep learning. And, you know, that's where it's like every project I do, I want to learn something. It could be a know-nothing project, and still I'm like, well, let me try something, or let me try something a little different. And, you know, that is going to roll into your next project, or a project 2 years from now or 3 years from now. And it's still, you're amassing these kind of this bag of edit tricks, and that's your experience, and that's why you are paid for what you do. And you know, I've cut a couple of shorts with new time directors, which I love, because they don't know the process. You know, some of them will cut on their own, but they'll come and sit with me and they're like, oh my God, you're so fast. Like, it's like, yeah, because I get where we're going, and I want to show you something as fast as possible, because that's when we're going to start being really creative. And so that's kind of where, you know, it's that I want to share with everybody what I've learned, because they're going to share with me. And that's why I love when you guys are doing this, because I think I haven't really had a chance to talk with many editors, because it's a different brain sort of structure. And, you know, the wife always goes, you guys are weirdos, but you guys are so creative. She's in production. So, but at the same time, it is, you know, it's one of those things too. I always say with editors too, it's good to know production. You know, it's really advantageous to, you know, I'll sit there and go, why didn't you guys get this shot? And I know things happen. You're on set, you have talent, you don't have talent, you have technical problems, you have weather problems, all different things. And okay, fine, I'll find a way to work around it. You know, we'll Band-Aid it, and I'm going to try to hide the Band-Aid. And, you know, that is so interesting to me, and especially just the technical side too, is really being a student, trying to be a student to what you do, helps you in the long run. Again, it's that I want to focus on being creative. I don't want to have to worry about the technical. I do that at the forefront to make sure that I can roll through these projects as seamlessly as possible, and hand off to somebody too, where these turnovers for films is very, very technical. And the last 3 films I've done, I haven't had an assistant editor. I've done it all myself. And it's difficult, but at the same time, it's, you know, I have to make sure I set up everything correctly. You know, not just the way I want it, but I know how things go at the end. When you turn over to color, when you turn over to sound, when you turn over to the composer. And I'm not saying I'm kind of I trust people. I want other people to work with, because I want them to learn. And that's how you learn, is by doing it, by trial by fire. And you're going to make a mistake, and that's okay. One of the biggest things that kind of like, it was early in my career, we were onlining for Star Wars Episode 2. It was a behind the scenes featurette, and I had an HDSR tape, and I was supposed to add in a scene in between. And this was just an insert, and I punched a hole basically in the time code. And I was just like, George Lucas is going to come after me, and I'm never going to work again. This is going to be horrible. And so I figured out, okay, I can actually, I have all the media. I can basically punch in everything around it and clean that time code. But it was one of those where it's like, you're going to make a mistake, and don't kill yourself about it, because you're going to learn. And if you don't know, ask somebody. We're all here to help. You know, and it's like, whether it being tricks for your keyboard, how to expedite, you know, doing certain things and certain functions so it just speeds you up. You know, those are the biggest things too, where it's, I want to share the knowledge.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's stuff like that, because I'm self-taught. I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. And so it's just like whatever. Kind of like I said, I taught myself in a way to edit quarter inch to quarter inch to quarter inch to quarter inch, and then using Premiere way back in the day, and then switching to Final Cut, and then coming back around to Premiere. It was just like the same thing, trial by fire. I was just like, okay, this is how it's going to go. And even for the technical stuff that you were talking about, like where I was like, all right, I have VCRs, I got RCAs, something's not right. What am I plugging into? How am I doing this? And then like figuring it out from there. Yeah, as you talked about, like talking with editors, like not until I really met Piotr and started talking with him did I really get opened up to like other editors, because it's always been me by myself with maybe some other editors that I do know from, other clients in Denver and whatever, but like a broader sense, I think now back then I was like, I knew 5 editors, and now I know 20, and we're all kind of the same, where everybody has imposter syndrome, everybody is super talented, and everybody has like, superpowers that maybe nobody else has. And they're like, okay, let me show you how I do this. And then everybody like kind of is, raising the tide that we're all like, swimming in or whatever. Yeah. I don't even know what that saying is, but it's the same thing. It's like, we're all there to be like, hey, we're this community that wants to see all of us succeed and stuff. And that's, super inspiring.
You're right. It is. I'm totally self-taught too, where it's like I went to film theory in the university, but editorial technical wise was self-taught. And I do say most editors need to do that. They need to just start screwing around with projects and seeing what works, what doesn't work. And for the longest time, it's difficult. You can get your hands on things now a lot easier too. Like I started on Premiere, it was probably mid 90s, and it was a pain in the butt. And it was like, we were defragging the computer because we're just like, things aren't playing fast enough. And it was just like, things are crashing. And it's just like, oh my God. But at the same time, it was fun because again, it was that technical, what are we doing to break it? And how do we avoid it? Or how do we basically make it better? And, I've cut on all different types of systems. And, for a long time, I was like, wow, this thing has crashed a million times. And I think the last 3 films, I think I crashed maybe 3 times total. And I'm like, wow, that tells me I'm doing something correctly. Yes, the systems are getting better and the software is getting better. But I'm not losing as much as I used to, because it is that kind of knowing what the expectations are of the system and the hardware. But sometimes it's fun, just trial by fire. You're going to figure it out, and may not be the easiest way, but you know how to do it. And then hopefully someone will show you how to do it better.
It's true. Yeah. Real quick, it's funny because, that's like, just like press the buttons and see what happens. And that's like how I kind of approach anything. And my wife hates it because she's like, this computer thing isn't working. I'm like, well, just start pressing buttons. And she's like, you just lost my page. I was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure stuff out.
And then it prints out randomly. No.
She's like, I'll just do it myself. Okay.
Well, experiment. That's what you do.
Yeah, that's right. I'm experimenting.
And the same time too, it's, being an editor is troubleshooting, and that's a lot of this is technical. It's like, well, if it's not this, then this, what about this? What about this? And I'm doing this project right now. It's a corporate thing, and I've got like 8 video lines, which is like unheard of for me. I like to keep things very minimal so I know what's going on. I'll save other versions of a timeline so I can always go back to something if I have to. But this one's got like 8 video lines, and things are going chaotic, and I'm using track mat keys. And sometimes it's working with the transitions, sometimes it's not, and it's driving me crazy, but at the same time, it's cool because it's like, oh, okay, that's how you do that. And then it's like, okay, now I can use that somewhere else. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, it's always troubleshooting.
We're problem solvers.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's totally, and it's on the technical side, but also on the artistic side also, because, with every film, I always say it's like, once we sort of get the story down, you go scene by scene and you say, what is this scene doing? What are we supposed to be communicating?
Yeah.
Is it part of the bigger story? Is it a breath? Is it basically just a know-nothing scene and we'll get rid of it? And then it's like, okay, well, where are our best takes? Let's start exploring other takes. What is, there might be a different emotion in there, or a different pause might actually create a completely different scene. And I always joke, I love the heads and tails of shots with actors and actresses because they kind of rest.
Oh, yeah.
And that resting face can be used
too.
in any way you want, basically. And that's where I'm just like, that's gold. Like, end of the scene, sitting there, just showing them for a second. It's like, okay, they're questioning something, or they're yearning, or, you know, it's like, that's awesome. I love that stuff.
Shot effects, right? You're using cool shot effects shots. Yeah, exactly. Like
bingo.
You get what you need.
And you add a little music, and it's like, oh god, now you're going through the roof.
And you just created a take that wasn't, you know, that didn't exist, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Back to Mona Lisa. You know, let's put something next to her. Is she watching a football game? Is, you know?
I'd like to come back to you've mentioned that Hypochondriac, right? That premiered on
South by Southwest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So can you talk briefly about navigating film festivals? I imagine you have attended, right?
I haven't had to do too much, which is kind of nice. I hate the business side. I would do all this for free if I could keep living, you know, but it's sort of difficult because the festival side is definitely tricky. I've had multiple films and shorts go to festivals. Like I had a short I did with this director who was super, it's called Date Night. It went to Santa Barbara Film Festival. I loved that short because it was right when COVID hit, basically, and it had sort of a tinge of that even before it, and it was really, really fun to cut. And then another one called Outlier. This director went and shot during the pandemic with his family, and they just basically got a pocket 6K camera and went and shot it and out in Michigan off a lake, and then brought it back, and he started putting it together, and then he came across me and I took it over, and we made a fun little film out of nothing, really. And that was really proud of that because, you know, he was kind of trying to learn all this, and at the same time I was like, I can do this, I can help you, I can make this better, I know I can. And we took a lot of time, and what I learned from him was it's really the producer directors, it's their focus on what festivals they want to go to. You have to put a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money into these festivals. Where you're submitting, you're going to get a lot of no's. You know, it was like, I think we put Hypochondriac up for Sundance, and I think they responded, we really love your film, it's just not fitting into our slate this year. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but, you know, it's like, okay, we're not going to be able to do it next year, you know. And so it's really that you just don't know what's going to hit and where. And you know, someone asked me the question of how do you know a film is going to go to like South by Southwest? And it's like, you don't. You really don't. There are so many good films out there that have only a couple eyeballs on them, but should have. You know, even we were saying the Florida Project, which I helped assist. I have all my friends are like, I can't believe that didn't get nominated. It was so different and so unique that it was just up against these different films, different names in it. You know, Sean was still an up-and-coming director, but this was his breakout. And, you know, that's where it's like, okay, that went to Cannes, you know. So it's like it got that recognition. But in the U.S., it was a little different because it's a different style to it. To basically, it is slower. It's a fly on the wall. It feels like a documentary, so it can get uncomfortable very quick. It's a lot of drive. You really got to push. You got to find what festivals are right for your film. That's number one. There's one I did called Face Your Fears. It's a short horror piece with the director Neil, who is a huge horror fan and brought me in to sort of help sort of take it to the next level. And that went to a bunch of horror film festivals, and he won a bunch of awards for it because he knew his audience. You know, he's not going to go, this is something that needs to go to Sundance or, you know, any of that kind of stuff because it's just different, you know. People have different tastes, but the horror audience is amazing because it's a huge audience. And so that kind of thing is sort of knowing what your film is, what is it communicating, and a lot of the time the film festivals probably aren't the biggest thing. You know, it's really just the distribution companies now. And a lot of these places too are becoming their own distribution companies because it's so much easier to put things out there and to deliver with all these streaming services. You can talk directly with them a lot of the time. And so, a lot of some of the films I worked on aren't streaming, and it's sort of a bummer because it's like, okay, well, you guys haven't worked out that deal, and there's not as much money there. And a lot of the time for me, it's you put so much time and effort and love into the things you cut, and at the end of it, you're done with it. I'm a freelance contractor, and so it's like, I don't get back end most of the time, and so it is that kind of like, okay, take my baby and be good with it, kind of thing.
Exactly. Just like I today I wrote to a director I worked with last year, and the short film isn't out yet. Like we finished it in like a year ago, and it's not out yet because like the director wanted a festival premiere. But now I'm like, talking to him that like, it's not the end of the day. Like you have to think forward. You have to like think about how you can premiere it in another way that maybe potentially will be even more impactful for your career than a festival premiere. Mm-hmm. So although it is a little bit frustrating, and I understand his frustration that he applied to like 10 festivals and didn't get any approval. At the same time, it's okay. It's okay. Like I think we have like quite a good film there, and it's
exactly right. Because I've done projects on my own where I'm like, this is awesome. Like I am so proud of this, and it's like, yeah, some people, they're watching how many films a day too, where it's like, okay, and you don't know what you're going up against. You have no idea. Yeah. And that's part of it too, is this is a competition and it's art again. It's like, okay, do you like the Rembrandt or the Van Gogh? And it's like, you got to pick one, like, which one do you like? And it's like, they're not bad, and so, and that was part of it, especially with Date Night. I think even before we went to the Santa Barbara Film Festival, he got picked up for Short of the Week. The website, which is actually a really good for short films. I mean, I can't go on there because I'll like 3 hours later, I'm like, oh my God, I just watched how many films? And it's like, there's so much good stuff, and so much creative talent out there where you're like, okay, now I'm invigorated. I want to do something else, but those are things you can reach out to where you're getting eyeballs, and that recognition is, you just have to have the right person see it at the right time. That's all it is. And the same way with every person you meet in this industry, it's a smaller industry than you think, because it is, Hypochondriac, I got it because of the producer I worked on with Breaking Fast. And he was like, I really think you could be perfect for this. And so he had me read the script and talk with the director, and, we did his vetting and all that. And that was like a huge compliment to me, because I was like, yeah, he liked working with me. And so now it's like, he wants to make sure people he works with work with me. And so one of the main big producer I sort of started my career with, we were doing 3D technology at the beginning of the 3D, and I was starting to cut 3D stuff, which was very weird, very different cutting style. But at the same time, he was kind of grooming me because he was old school. Like he was very ABC promo division in the 80s when it was like going through the roof. We went separate ways, and then later on he's like, I think I want to bring you in for this film. Have you cut any films in the meantime? And this is like 5-6 years later. He's like, yeah, I've done a couple little tiny indies. And that's where he sort of started my big break and sort of doing bigger things. And, lo and behold, I met my wife as she was post coordinating on that film too, which was so interesting. But at the same time, it's like, you just don't know. We all want to help each other. We're all putting our names on these projects, and that's number one, is that my name is going on these things, and I want to do the best I can. I want to make sure everyone else looks the best they can. And that just pushes you to try even harder. And the big thing too, especially as you guys probably know as an editor, you got to be careful on your personal work boundaries. That's a huge thing that blurs a lot. And, where I'll sit there and I could be editing forever and ever and ever and ever. And it's like, okay, I need to back off. I need to make sure I'm mentally okay to come back into this tomorrow. That's always very difficult because you do want to be hungry and do the most you can to show you're hungry to do this, but at the same time, you got to make sure you don't over push yourself. You don't want to get burnt out for sure.
How did you get involved in the Florida project?
Florida project, that was actually from the same producer. It's so funny because he was post-producing it. He was talking about it, and I remember him, I was cutting something else with him, and he kept talking about this Florida project, and I'm like, God, I wonder what the name of it is, because he just keeps saying the Florida project, and I'm like, oh, so they're doing it in Florida. Like, I literally for the longest time didn't realize that was the title. So just like, what is the name of this film?
Perfect.
And that was in the early stages where they were talking about, oh, they're going to shoot on film, and he had just done Tangerine, which was all on iPhone, and so we were all like, why does he want to do it on film? You know, we have plugins and we have really good grain textures we could add on, you know, and he was very adamant about it, which was awesome. And basically he knows I'm technically skilled and artistically, and so Sean needed someone that could help him walk through the process, basically. And because he was cutting on Final Cut, that's why he cut Tangerine on. He had never cut on Premiere, so I helped set him up with how to do it, what's going on, and especially with the turnovers. Like, that was huge because, you know, not all editors are clean editors, not all editors are messy editors. You know, there's certain styles people do things, and so I was the one kind of breaking things apart and sort of helping. So it was, you know, he's changing audio left and right, and so it was like tracking that stuff of what's changing, what do I need to get to the audio house. So he created a lot of the ambient audio, and the Muzak was actually self-created, which was awesome because it was very much controlling your feelings and what's going on and what it's trying to create inside your head. And so that was fun because at the same time we're both in LA, but we were never in the same room. And he really does like working at nights. Like, he starts really late and works all through the night, where it's nice because you don't get interrupted by things. It's usually generally quiet. And then I'd get up and basically go through things and figure out, okay, what's working, what's not working. And the turnover side, we were turning over to Technicolor New York. So basically the time schedule was really weird because he'd have things in the morning, had to work through it, fix it, and then get it to New York before they closed. And, you know, we're uploading everything. And so you're talking gigs and gigs and gigs, which is way easier now, you know, than it used to be. But at the same time, it was a really interesting project because he is very much in his own rabbit hole. He'll do something and then he'll show. But really there is no rough cut, put it that way. Where with me, I always do a rough cut because it's like, what's working, what's not working. I don't want to drill into something and waste my time and waste their time. And, you know, even the funny joke is an editor assembly is something that is so necessary, but should never, ever see the light of day. And, you know, see, I should go back and watch the Hypochondriac one because it's probably so bad. But at the same time, you have to sort of see what the foundation is. And that tells you what's working, what's not working, even in its rawest form, because you're just cutting off the script. And I wasn't on the shoot. So it's like, what's my first interpretation? You know, I can't get in the director's head right away, you know, so it's like, that's why we sit down and start working through it. So yeah, you're going to do things that people hate, and that's okay.
What workflow did you use with him? Because like I know that like Sean said that you have set it up in super user-friendly way for him, right? So did you use like team projects in Premiere Pro, or what was it?
Team projects was not as robust at that point. And so what we did is we had mirroring drives, and basically we were sending projects back and forth, and he would send me his master project. I would clean everything up, basically create a new sequence, back everything up, save that actual immediate project, date it, time it. And I always do it to the cloud now, is always saving one of my project files because it's just everything burns down, I still got my project. You know, it's really that kind of built-in safety net. And so then I'd send it back to him. He would know exactly, this is the date. Okay, here it is. It's really easy to find. And so part of that is where I always say with editors too, is that you kind of need to have a little bit of OCD. Like, you have to be clean. The cleaner you are, the faster you're going to work. And with every project I do, I always put in my head, if I have to leave this project halfway through, I want an editor to be able to jump in and take off right where I was without questioning anything. And so it's foldering everything, labeling it, like all those things, because if I'm on week 10 of a 12-week edit, I don't want to be slowed down. Where is this? Where is this? Where is this? I'm sure, as you know, with documentaries, that's like a nightmare. Like it's hard. It's very difficult. And so that was sort of keeping it clean for Sean to be able to set up his keyboard like Final Cut, which was 2 seconds. And he's like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. Very drag and drop, which is awesome. And it's non-destructive. I always had backups of all the projects and everything. So if he's like, where did this go? I can pull it and send it. But the new thing is with the documentary I'm working on right now is we're using Productions, which is awesome. We're mirroring our hard drives. We didn't do team projects just because it's a documentary and the linking can sometimes take a little while. It's perfect for branded content and commercials and stuff like that. Team projects is a rock star. I did a music video on one of those and it was so much fun to do because it's like, take a look at this. Sync. Okay, I'm looking at it. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. But we're using Productions and basically just have all my different breakdowns as basically they're Avid bins almost, where you can take that bin and send it. And we have these transfer bins where it's, here's my latest cut. I'll drag it down, send it over. And then I can update any of those folders to my other editor or producer. And it makes it very, very simple where you're not destroying the master project. You're just sending these folders and you can actually send them and back them up differently. So that was a lot of fun. I know it was a while ago. There's another documentary I was working on that got put on pause for a minute called the Baja Run. It's about the Baja 1000 in Mexico. And we were talking with Adobe about using Productions. This was just before Productions came out. It was just shared projects. And we had a production with all these folders and I wanted to see if I could create a team project inside of there. Because then I could have that where the director could just access this one folder as a team project. So I could be like, oh, here's this cut, drag it down there and it can sync up. Yeah, that's where I'm like.
But that would be interesting.
And I know I started getting the Adobe guys going like, okay, this is kind of cool. This makes sense because it's sort of localizing. You don't have access to the full project, which I don't want you to do, but I need something instead of bouncing in and out. So again, technology and what do we need? What do we have fun with? And, know.
I'd love actually team projects to get a little bit better than they are. I mean, I use team projects quite often actually. I'm editing a short film right now with a director from the US. And we use short project for that, team projects for that. For the one I did last year, the director actually wanted to have his own input into the select, right? So I created for each scene he had his own sequence where he could have his own select reels. I did what you did for Sean, so I recorded a short tutorial for him and just walk him through the interface, setting him up for success, basically.
That's awesome.
I'd love, the Adobe team to work a little bit harder on that aspect of the program.
I agree. And I wonder if it's server throughput or what, because there are little hangups here and there. And, the latest thing I've been loving, especially for this documentary, is the transcribe to text. And so that's been huge where we don't have to send it out of house. And it's just set it, go. And I was messing with something where I created my selects off of an interview and I was like, oh God, I wish I could I can retranscribe right now. And so it's like, this is awesome.
This is awesome.
It's making my life so much easier.
It's one of those updates that really was huge. Oh, really? We can do it?
Huge. So good. But it's technologically it's becoming so much easier. There are tried and true ways, of course. But we're always trying to push the bounds because we want to make it easier. We want to have more sort of flexibility in what we're doing, and be artistic again. Don't let the technology hinder us if possible. But at the same time, we're firefighters too. Things are going to pop up and burn, and it's like, okay, put this one out. Okay, now this one.
What did you learn from Sean Baker, from the editing side point of view? Because I need to admit, the Florida Project is one of my favorite films. I really like Sean Baker's filmography
style. A lot of that is. it was sort of it's kind of an old school homage almost, where it's a lot of long takes and you just feel like you're sitting there, but there's enough going on where your eye's active. And he was very particular about certain things. We were, if there's a burnt out light or something like that, I don't want your eye going over here. I am leading your eye and telling you what to look at is a huge thing for editors, of course. But at the same time, it's sort of the slowing down, and everyone was going like, you're shooting film and you're filming with kids. So like, there's going to be problems, like, but at the same time, sound was huge. And with Premiere, editing with sound is a lot easier. So we were doing a lot of dips, ins and outs, because, he's yelling directions to the kids while they're in the middle of the scene. And so that became very natural, where the kids were like, okay, now I'm just going to look over here and sort of go walk over there towards the tree. And it was like, almost very stage-like, which was awesome. And that's, again, why it is the kind of classical feel and the slow burn. Sean's projects are all very unique and very shining a light on things a lot of people don't realize are out there. And that's also really unique, because that makes it stand out from all other, features and stuff like that. So his timing and his feeling of when to cut and when not to cut, and that's, I think, the hardest part in our job, is not cutting something is a big choice. There's a little fumble there, or there's something there, and it's like, do I really want to cut this? And
in a way, cutting is easier in a way, right?
Yep. But then all of a sudden you have a scene where it's like cut.
Also, like, cut releases tension, right? So and like, I think that in his films, even though you don't have this action tension, you have a lot of emotional tension, and so having these long takes is what combined with great acting, makes the performance powerful.
I totally agree. And, like sitting, in the field or the Everglades and hearing the sounds, and you're just like, wow, you get transported, and again, the thing is like, they're right across the street from Disney World, the happiest place on earth. And yet they're so lonely, where it's like that sort of duality of that was so apparent through the whole thing. And sort of, again, it is that slow burn. It is that creating the awkward tension, and that again is, going back and looking at some old films, some of the old spaghetti westerns, where it's like, okay, why is this shot still going on? It's like, I see the sunset, and then the shot goes on for another minute, and you're like, okay, I got it. Like, I'm freaking out. I'm trying to hit cut. Like, but it does. And that's part of what we used in Hypochondriac too, where it's these long, slow takes. You're watching things happen and letting the sound and the music play in, and sort of, part of it too is there's an homage to Ghost in there, and some people laugh and some people think it's funny, and it is. It's insanity, and it is sort of like, yes, it's a direct sort of nod to these certain things. And like I said with Donnie Darko, it's like, yes, we know it looks like Donnie Darko. It's meant to be like that. He grew up on this kind of stuff.
Called
and so it is this. Exactly. Yeah, nothing's new anymore.
Great, good. What? How does the saying go? Good artist
don't steal.
Copy. Great artist steal.
Yes, exactly. And that's, learning about like Quentin Tarantino. He is the bricolage director. Everything has a reason. Everything is from the past, and it's but it's making it new. And that's the thing, where it's like, these techniques they're here for a reason. And at the same time, I always tell directors and producers, don't let me say no if it fights against these techniques, because we might come across something, or I might spark an idea from someone else. That's a big thing that I've learned over the last couple of years of, yes, I know this craft and I know what can work and what won't work, but at the same time, I don't know everything. And so let's experiment. This is non-destructive. Why not? Because you'll come up with something that you never thought of before, and it was because someone said, "Oh, well, let's jump the 180 line." And there's a lot more of that recently, because people are tracking characters more. We're following our details, and tracking of faces and stories is so much better than it used to be, because we have so much media we consume, and so that 180 line is kind of it's blurred completely. You know,
once you understand like geography and like what the audience needs to understand, you can bend it through. Like you can break it with ease.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's, I think, with especially on that point is, you know, showing sort of the setting or the room beforehand so people know what's where. And then after that, you're playing, the map's already been laid out so people understand, you know. And so it is, again, that you're pre-planning, but you have a reason for doing it. And so it is those guidelines. And so, and again, bending them is just so much fun too.
By the way, I just talking about like, you know, cutting and not cutting. Yesterday I watched Victoria. It's 2015 movie that is one take. It's 2 hours long, over 2 hours long, and it's one take, and it's not combined from multiple takes, like for example 1917 is. It's all one take from start to the end.
Wow.
And I need to say it's super captivating. So if you get a chance to watch it, like please do.
I'll have to do that because I think I can't fall asleep to movies or TV. I follow story too much and I just can't turn my brain off. Well, the only other film I've ever fallen asleep in was called Russian Ark. And I think it was late 90s or early 2000s. And that's where basically it's a single take. And I think it's only an hour because the technology wasn't that good. They actually were carrying a hard drive.
I've heard about that movie. I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it.
2 takes. Yeah, the first take, something happened with the choreography, and so they had to stop. And the second take, I mean, massive. They're going through St. Petersburg, and it's amazing. A lot of dancing and a lot of choreography. I mean, extra, like the wrangling of the extras must have been chaos. But it was really cool. But at the same time, I was like, there's no cutting. And I woke up and there's like 10 minutes left. And I was like, whoa, okay, maybe I am an editor. But it was cool. I mean, technological feat for sure. I'll have to watch that. That'll be awesome.
Mike, if you could give an advice to someone like me who has edited a few shorts, but wants to edit a feature, what would you say? And someone who wants to do it remotely, because I'm in Poland and I intend to stay in Poland. So
yes. And that's, you know, part of it too is that, you know, a lot of this technology now is, you know, doing screen shares through Zoom. You know, if your internet is good enough, there really isn't too much of a lag right now. And that's, I do feel that editing with someone in person expedites the process because you can throw something up against the wall and you don't have to export it and show it. You're basically, they can know right away, nope, that's not going to work. Yes, that's going to work. The biggest thing is, you know, I think shorts are so powerful because, you know, everyone always goes, oh, do you have a reel? And I'm like, I do features. I don't do sizzle reels because I can do a cool cut, but that's not going to show what I can do. And so I had one a long time ago and I was like, I'm stopping doing this because it's not helping me. You know, it's really just your resume and showing a scene. And so especially with up and coming editors that are trying to do narrative work, is working with narrative stuff and doing little things and going out there. And, you know, I was jumping on with new directors who really don't have anything to show. And I'm like, well, let's do this because I don't know where you're going to go. You know, you could become something huge. And I've had a director I worked with, we did commercial work and he directed his first feature a bunch of years ago. And he called me up and it was like, yeah, that's awesome. You know, I was sort of telling him, go write a script, go do something. You're creative. And I think shorts are huge because there are so many people out there looking for help. And again, it's sort of, you have to know what your time is worth and how far you're willing to bend because you are going to be, a lot of this is going to be off time. You may not be paid much, but at the same time, you're meeting people. And that's the biggest thing is networking, which is hard. It's really hard. But at the same time, there's so many different things out there and so many different websites and websites looking for people like us to go and just try and do. And you have to show that you can do it before you can actually do it, or else you just know somebody. And so, again, the biggest thing I think is honing the narrative craft and showing what you can do and trying to meet as many people as possible. Because it's a difficult to break into, as you guys were saying too. It's like I didn't work up the assistant editor ladder. I was straight off editor, doing it on my own, trying things out. I was the technical guy actually for a long time. I did online work for the first 8 years of my career, and basically dropped it because I was like, I'm tired of fixing other people's stuff, and I want to create my own stuff. And so that was like, okay, I'm starting from fresh. Like I really don't know where I'm going or who to contact. I know some people, but it was really just sort of getting my hands dirty. And, even with corporate and commercial and doc stuff, that does show your talent. That does show your crafting story. And, and that's where, again, we're trying to create emotion. Whether I want that, or that's sad, I want to donate, or that's amazing, that's cool, I want to be there. Those things are all part of our craft. And flexing that and showing and basically proving to yourself you can do it is the first step. And then basically reaching out to all these different people that you can find and be like, well, let's give it a shot, and hey, I want to make sure I'm a fit. There's certain projects where you're spending a lot of time with these directors. And I think one of my producers once said, is like, editors should have a PhD in psychology because they're dealing with people in the hardest spots of their life trying to figure stuff out. And it's just like, okay, I've heard this story and I don't know whether I should respond to it or just keep working or, and at the same time too, we're creating these emotions from people. We're puppet masters, and that's awesome and that's scary at the same time. And so, really is, again, try not to doubt yourself, and you're going to, and at the same time, just keep trying, keep working at it. And again, show your stuff off. Like, even if your stuff isn't getting into film festivals, I try to send it to other people or my other editor friends. I'll be like, hey, do you have notes for this? Even test screenings for features that I do. I always demand a test screening. Usually it's friends and family and stuff, but I'm like, let it rip, guys. We want to hear what's working, what's not working. Figure out if it's a personal thing or if it's a story thing. That's the hardest part to decipher too. But that's when I'll bring in people I know, or we'll send links to them and be like, because then they start seeing what you can do. And it's like, again, it's that you're networking, you're showing off your business card is your work. That is literally, that is why your name means so much. And so again, it's really reaching out, trying to find people that are like-minded with like you, and we're trying to get somewhere, and that plants a seed in their head that, oh yeah, I want to work with them again. It's tricky. It's definitely tricky. And it's always a fight, no matter how big you are as an editor, actor, any profession. It's getting past that resume point is probably the biggest thing too, where I'm like, I just want to meet with them. Because when you meet with someone, you're like, oh yeah, we can talk circles around this project, and you guys are going to be in alignment with me, and I'm going to be in alignment with you. It's really kind of like, that's the hardest part starting, is really being like, well, can we at least talk? Can I at least get my foot in the door to at least say hi? My name. I could be on some other project that comes up in the future from you. So it's just trying to be savvy with that kind of stuff. It's definitely, it's a business. It's you're self-employed, and just, a lot of the time too, is I didn't say no to a lot of stuff early on, and some of that was good and some of that was bad. And of course you learn, and that is part of it too, is it's a learning process, but always make sure you protect yourself too. The biggest thing I found is early on was creating my own little deal memos where you're not pinned with everything. And it can be simple. There's good ones online too that you can see, even just like on the editors, MPEG, the Motion Picture of Editors Guild. They have like a sample demo deal memo, things like that, where it's like, it's always a good thing to make sure you're not liable. Because you're doing work, things can go sideways for any number of reasons, and everyone will try to pin it on you. So having those things to protect you, this is a business, is huge. And that's something that took me a really long time to learn, because I always give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And, again, we are usually the last ones that touch things. And so it's just having sort of a blanket kind of thing where it's like, if things go sideways, I can walk away. You can take your media, you'll walk away. Simple little things like that are huge, especially for up and coming editors. It doesn't have to be too complicated. It's just making sure you and whatever the other party is that, hey, like, I'm not liable for any of this stuff. It's like, hey, I'm not, we're we're making sure I'm not going to badmouth, you're not going to badmouth, simple things like that, where it's like, this is even my rate, where it's like, we're locking it in on paper so they can't short you, and those little things where it's like, and I think it was my wife was the one who was really pushing for this, because she was starting to see this where, okay, my job would go on hiatus for a little while. And it's like, well, was that a deal? Were you guys okay with that or not? And it's like, are you being paid weekly? Are you billing by the day? Like, when are you invoicing? Things like that, where there is a business side to it. I hate the business side because I just want to do this. But at the same time, we're the business. We're the talent.
Right. It's not for the faint of heart. I always say that. Being freelancer is not for the faint of heart.
Nope. And at the same time, I love it because the next month you have no idea what could be around the corner.
Right.
It really, it could just be someone all of a sudden reaches out. Like, I just had a director reach out directly to me. So I might have a feature coming up in 3 months where he wants to co-edit. And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally down with that. Like, I can walk you through this, where it's like, I know how to do this. And he's like, I love your style and I love your technicality and I know you can do it. And it popped out of nowhere. And so it's just like, again, it's that networking, it's that self-branding, and again, showing who you are, that is a big thing too, is getting that foot in the door. But again, protect yourself too.
Right. It's that being nice. I mean, it all boils down to like being personable and being nice and you're remembered by your talent, but also like, this is a guy that I want to hang out with. Or this is a girl I want to hang out with because they say cool things or, whatever. So
it's so true. Again, you spend so much time with these people where it's like, I've worked with some people that I did not like, and it did not make it fun, and it made the project very difficult.
Yeah.
And
for everyone. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's not fun, but when you're doing something you really love doing and you're having fun, oh my God, like, let's keep the ball rolling.
Exactly.
Nice.
Mike, I like to ask everyone about their favorite editing or filmmaking book. Do you have one?
The Art of the Cut is probably my favorite right now. And, honestly, I'm still so trial by fire, hands-on. It's more of watching films and going, oh my God, I haven't thought of doing something like that before.
Yeah.
Or trying to break things down where, like I said, with even Reservoir Dogs, it was like, that was a huge thing for me because it was like, yeah, that was a practicality thing. Same with Jaws. That was practicality. Jaws was not supposed to be like that, And so finding ways around it and, being in the trenches and knowing where it's like, yeah, this is how you do it, and there's a million different ways you can do it. And that's, I think my favorite thing is, I am such a visual person where it's like, that's why I became an editor. It's like, I see and I can do, and even just going to film school, it was all theory, it was all writing, and I'm not the best writer. I just can't put those things together. But at the same time, it made me learn about film foundations. And I think that was probably some of the best teachers I had, where we had to watch films like, we had to watch Donnie Darko and not write about time. And that was like, ooh, how am I going to write about this film where we don't talk about that date? And it's all, you're breaking down other pieces of the film. There was one we had to watch, like Mulholland Drive, and it was like, well, what do you think? What does this mean? And so you're really sitting there and analyzing. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. Like, even if you don't like the film, still breaking it down and sort of going, well, what is that? And again, the biggest thing, when you walk out of a film and you're questioning things or you can't stop thinking about it, that's awesome. Whether good or bad, Exactly. And that's when you walk away from a film, you're like, oh, that was fun. And then you're moving on. It's like, okay, that's a popcorn film, but like those ones that you really start thinking is like, that's cool. That is so much fun. And that's, again, you're putting fuel into other people's brains that just can't stop. And so, I think it is. It's just sort of trying to enjoy everything. Give it a shot,
I totally agree with that. One of those films, for example, for me is a Polish film, Corpus Christi. Maybe you've seen it. I don't know. You
No, I haven't. I've heard of it. Yeah.
It has been nominated, I think, to Oscars a few years ago, like 2 years ago. And it's one of those films that, you know, I keep thinking about it. Like, and for the 3 or 4 days after I've seen it for the first time, I was just constantly thinking about it. Like, anyway, I'm going off track over here. But yeah,
no, I bring up the Mulholland Drive because I still continually, David Lynch is crazy, you know. But also I love the one of the ones I loved was The Fountain by Aronofsky, where it was that sci-fi, but it had the meaning was really weird, and so it's really the audience putting together. And part of that is we did that in Hypochondriac, where in our test screenings people were asking these questions, and I'm like, oh my god, that's awesome. They're like, is this character real? And we're like, oh my god, I never even thought about that. Like, that is those things where it's like, that's awesome. Like I want people to question. I want people what was real and what was not real, and letting people decide for themselves. That's awesome. That's really cool. Like Inception, you know, it's like, is he still there in the dream or not? You know?
Do you have like any message for editors who will listen to it? Anything you'd like to add?
You know, don't doubt yourself. And when you do, push through it, because it is like, I constantly doubt what I can do. And I constantly question, was that the right call? And at the same time, it's art, you know, and it's, if you feel it in the moment and you do what you think is right, and don't give up, because I've gone every single different which way in my career. And I've met so many different people and so many different projects, from the bottom of the barrel to outside the barrel. And, you know, it's really one of those things is, if you really do enjoy what you're doing, you're going to fight through it and you're going to make it. That's the thing. And it's really up to you to, you know, you set a bar and don't think that it's out of reach, and don't make it out of reach. You know, that's the big thing. And so that is where it's small steps. It's not a light switch. It's not, oh my God, I'm going to be famous in 2 seconds. It's a grind. It is work. You know, we're doing this to be able to enjoy life, and at the same time enjoying what you do. That's just a win. That is a huge win. And I want that for everybody, because we're creating content, you know, and people are consuming it, and that's awesome.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That was really good. Really good. Love it.
No, you guys are awesome. I'm so happy to finally talk to some editors. This is great. I can say one little thing and you guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
And then it's like, okay, let's hang out. When can we hang out together now?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you guys are going to have to do like a Zoom pub crawl or something.
Yeah, we'll do it today.
We'll figure it out.
You should do so. Just even like a quick little, like, you know, you could have 20 editors come together. We could all have a drink and sort of go around the room and just talk. I mean, honestly, that'd be so
awesome
much
idea,
fun.
Actually.
Nice to meet you guys. Thank you. Thank you.
We can have you on again, maybe for your
Please.
next the documentary or whatever this next feature is.
Or the next feature, definitely. That'd be awesome. No, it's great meeting you guys. I'm glad you guys are doing this. This is so cool. Like it's just, I haven't seen anything like this before, and so it's definitely, I'm going to start pushing it out into the world also.
I love that we get to talk with editors like Mike, who are so passionate about their editing and about the art form. And I love that he loves what we're doing on this podcast. So yeah, he was I mean, we're so lucky with the people that we get to talk to. And Mike is another one of those down to earth people who are just stoked to be like, they're living out their dream. Like, this is their dream job. And you can tell that it's their dream job.
Yeah, that's another conversation that we could just, you know, keep going.
Yeah.
And also, like, a shameless plug here, but, you know, I loved seeing that a lot of the workflow related things that he talked about are just the things that I teach in the editing chef. So a shameless plug, I know, but
it's relevant.
I believe we'll delivering something great here. So
yeah, I thought that was awesome too, because I was thinking that same thing. He was saying like, oh, do this and do that. And I was like, this is stuff that Piotr talks about. Like, Mike is more elevated in his career than we are in regards to that, like working in Hollywood and whatever, but also we're like still on the same playing field. Like, you heard it in the conversation that we were having. He's like, yeah, that's this. That's what I do that too. Like we're all doing the same thing, regardless of where we are in our careers. We're like coming from the same place. And that's super exciting and super inspiring.
Yeah, definitely. It also gives us hope. So and by the way, shoot us a message. Like we would love to hear from you listeners, from you dear listeners. So there is this link where you can actually record the question in an audio form. So if you're listening to it, like if you're that far into the episode, you're clearly interested in the topics we talk about. So ask us a question, or I don't know, just, say a few nice words or something you're frustrated with or whatever. We would love to hear it. So that's it for today. Until the next time, shoot and edit
like there's no tomorrow.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
If you like what you've heard, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you've listened to this on. Your reviews help more people discover this show. You can also follow us on Instagram. Just search for @CutToReveal and tell your friends.
And if you have any questions or comments, send them to podcast@cuttothepoint.com. And who knows, maybe we'll use them in the future episodes. And as we say around here, until the next time, shoot and edit like there is no tomorrow.